I've found so many things that possibly could affect a child's body that if we remove that trigger, they start to go back to living optimally, and they drop these diagnoses and need for meds because you found out why there was a problem versus because of a problem, we're going to give this chemical.
Welcome to the Christy-Faith Show, where we share game-changing ideas with intentional parents like you. I'm your host, Christy-Faith, experienced educational advisor and homeschool enthusiast. Together, we'll explore ways to enrich and transform both your life and the lives of your children. Is your child struggling with attention, memory, reading, writing, or math? If you're experiencing this, you know how heart-wrenching it is to watch them face these hurdles. You've poured love, time, and attention into their education, yet the struggle persists, leaving you feeling stuck and desperately searching for answers. You guys, I want you to know about Learning RX, a proven program designed to help your child's cognitive skills, enabling them to think faster, learn more easily, and perform at their best. I'm talking getting real long-term help here with things like ADHD and dyslexia. Learning RX is backed by 35 years of research, and their results are transformative. Use code HOME50 for $50 off your cognitive skills assessment. Go to learningrx.com or click the link in the show notes.
Welcome to today's show. We are going to be talking about an issue today that may seem foreign to you, but I think impacts a lot more people than we think. And I have invited Dr. Jaban Moore on our show today. He is a doctor of chiropractic located in Kansas City who works with clients through functional medicine to assist them in overcoming chronic health conditions. At the age of 25, he went from being an award-winning college athlete to not being able to get out of bed. He sought out countless doctors for answers, but doctors only gave him Band-Aid solutions. He was later diagnosed with Lyme disease. Once he overcame this complex infection, he dedicated his practice to helping clients uncover the causes of their symptoms. Dr. Moore specializes in Lyme disease, PANS, PANDAS, autism, and environmental toxicities. We are so glad to have him on the show today. It's going to be a great conversation. I am so excited about the topic today, which is PANS or PANDAS. And if you have not heard those terms before, you need to stop and listen to this episode because we are bringing yet another game-changing idea to intentional parents. And now you might be thinking, this sounds medical. How does this affect my kid's learning? You might be a homeschooler. Your kid might be in school. And I want to tell you that this is going to be an extremely important show for you to listen to because PANS and PANDAS, it may be a little bit newer in terms of an idea, but we have an expert on here today that can explain what it is and how we treat PANDAS. How do we know if our kid may have it and what that means if they do? Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Jaban Moore. I would love to hear first your story. I read your bio and I found it so fascinating because I know that you also had Lyme disease. Would you share with our audience how you got interested in alternative medicine, Lyme disease, and PANDAS?
Absolutely. So, just growing up, I always felt like I was a little bit on maybe the different side because although I grew up in a very normal Western medicine family, I didn't love taking ibuprofen when I was sore from working out. My coaches would tell me to do that. So I always just felt like understanding the body and feeling through what's happening is going to give you information to be able to do better with your body. So that was just a natural, internal thing for me. So I always wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to become a orthopedic surgeon, help athletes get back on the field. What I realized is when I was in college as a college athlete, that I would always gravitate toward chiropractors, physical therapists to get me back on the field quickly. Whereas if I was going to go to an orthopedic surgeon, my career might be over in sports at the time, or, I was definitely going to lose the season because I had a major injury. And I was like, that's not really where I want to place myself within working with athletes. I want to be able to be that guy that's like, all right, let's get back. Well, graduated college. I had a lot of opportunity to just really enjoy sports in college, which I loved. And I got to throw shot put in national championship meets. So I was a big boy. I was 250 pounds. When I got to chiropractic school, I got to lose this weight. I got to get smaller. So I lost 60 pounds that summer. And then symptoms started kicking in. I was the healthiest looking I'd ever been in my life. I looked fully normal. I was fit. I was athletic. I was young. And I felt like crap. Brain fog started coming on. Hormone issues started coming. Just fatigue and pain all really started cropping up. And I went from Western medicine doctors to functional medicine doctors to acupuncturists and everybody in between that you can think of. I was looking for answers because I was just like, I'm young, I'm healthy. Why don't I feel good? Just like so many parents out there are doing with their children. Why are they anxious? Why are they depressed? Why are they ADHD? Like these diagnoses of a title. So somebody's like, well, maybe you just are developing arthritis or chronic fatigue, or, you have erectile dysfunction. So take this pill, it'll help. And to me, it didn't sit well. I was like, I don't want to take a pill that changes my physiology without understanding why it's not working appropriately. That's just always in myself been important, is the why. So finally, I bumped into a guy who's like, hey, have you thought about Lyme disease? I was like, nope. What is it? Like I knew what it was from a distance. Like I'd heard of it. Oh, it comes from ticks. Great. That's about all I knew. But he goes, I don't really know anymore. But that might be what's causing your thing, because when it's mystery, that's a lot of times what it is. Great. So I went down the rabbit hole and I figured out a doctor that I went and found that was an expert. He helped me to get well. As soon as I graduated from school, he's like, well, now that you know how to do this, I have a wait list forever long. I'm going to send people to you. So he started sending me Lyme clients like day one in practice. And if you don't know anything about Lyme disease, it was one of the most like difficult, complex conditions that people deal with as far as, like outside of a hospital type of practice. And so I started there, and I had a guy come in who was just in almost a state of disarray within his life because he was so dysfunctional. He told me if I didn't get him well, that he might do something really bad. And I was like, man, you can't say that kind of stuff to me. Long story short, he got well. He then asked me, can I help his son? And I said, what's going on with your son? He said, he's autistic. And I go, I don't know anything about that. So then he goes, well, wait a minute. Well, what'd you do for me? And I said, well, I worked on removing stressors or interference from your body so that it can work at an optimal level. He said, can you do that for my kid? I go, well, sure, we can do that. So we did. He started, and he was autistic, and he was basically the OT said, he's probably going to live at home someday. He's not going to be able to carry a job, those sorts of things. As we started working with him, one day he told a lie. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, is that's bad, right? He's like, no, it's good. It's creative. He's learning how to get out of people what he wants. And then he started learning how to use iPads in separate rooms. And then he started to develop further, more complex communication. Long story short, I bumped into the kid about a year ago working at Chipotle, drove his own car there because I saw him get out of it. And he's now going to be a functioning member of society. He's still not, should I say, perfectly neurotypical. You can still tell that there's slight differences, but I'm like, shoot, I'm kind of different too. Who cares? But then after working with that kid and seeing results, he told another parent that told another parent. And here I am with a clinic full of kids dealing with autism. And then PANS came in, which was even more difficult on top of autism. So that's like my journey to where we are with PANS and PANDAS. I never meant to be there. I didn't know anything about it, but I was willing to look beyond a symptom and look for causations and how to optimize the body for best function.
Now, would you explain to the audience what PANS or PANDAS is?
So PANS and PANDAS is a pediatric condition. That's the P. It's autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep is PANDAS. So it's not a cute little bear, but if you go Google it, that's what you'll find. But it is a condition of the brain caused by a strep infection that's autoimmune. PANS is basically the exact same thing. Pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome that's basically caused by anything else. So whether that be mold or mercury or Lyme disease, anything else that triggers the immune system to create an inflammatory response into your brain. So that's the definition of the word. But if it's your kid, you don't care what the word is. You don't care what the initials are. You just care what your kid's dealing with, right? So it's a situation where your kid is, for all intents and purposes, This is their baseline. Like they act this way. They do it for a few years, and they're developing, they're growing, but they're not stuck to your leg anymore at the age of 4. They're developing some handwriting at the age of 6, whatever age you're with them. I don't know all the developmental stages. I leave that to the professionals in that category, but they're doing these things in normal context of their lives. And then they get, say, a sickness, a strep infection, which is that PANDAS. And within a few weeks to months afterward, you see their behavior completely change. So they become anxious, develop some OCD type traits. They might become sensitive to clothing, food, become more food sensitive, develop histamine responses. And these are just a few of the many different symptoms, because they can have pain, fears, intrusive thoughts. There's a list I actually created that was maybe 50 symptoms long, because there's just so many. Increased urination, constipation, diarrhea, confusion, baby talk. Like, the list is pretty long. To fit into the PANS PANDAS, you have to have infection and then very rapid onset of these symptoms. But there's another condition called autoimmune encephalitis, where it's the exact same symptoms, really the same causation. The difference is it just takes longer to have an onset. So you're just like, my kid just doesn't seem like they were 4 or 5 months ago, but it didn't happen overnight. So therefore, it's not PANS PANDAS, it's encephalitis.
Fascinating. Now, I'm curious, when families come to your practice wondering if maybe this is PANS or PANDAS, I'm curious to ask you, are these kiddos that maybe have been given diagnoses already and the parents are thinking to themselves, that just doesn't sound right?
All the time. And there's a bunch of stats that wrap around that, just to give you guys some frame of reference, because it's such an important thing. When I have any symptom walk into my clinic, any symptom, it doesn't matter what it is, what's the cause is the first thing that comes to my mind. What is triggering this to happen? Is it an infection, a toxin, or a trauma? What is causing this to happen? So the thing is, PANDAS was only discovered about 12-ish years ago by Dr. Sweeto. She was a NIH researcher, so highly accredited, right? NIH. And she figured out that these kids that she was working with presented somewhat autistic symptoms, but didn't fit all the criteria. So PANDAS was born. But then as research progressed, she figured out that as many as 25% of kids with tic disorders, OCD, Tourette syndrome, actually, when tested, show that PANDAS is a higher likelihood than those actual diagnoses. Although those things are happening, they are having tics, they are OCD, they have movements. It's not just a thing that's happening. There's actually a causation to it, which is that autoimmune encephalitis situation. But even beyond that, I'm just in my own clinic, as I'm doing research, I've looked up how many kids are anxious. About 9.4% in America, 5.8 million. How many are ADHD? 9.8%, 6 million. How many have behavior problems? So maybe fall in the ODD, 8.9% or 5.5 million. Depression, 4.4% or 2.7 million. All of these are diagnoses of a symptom of, well, the title that they were given, or autoimmune encephalitis or PANS PANDAS. So could there be a cause for your child having symptoms that's not just simply because?
Before we continue, I want to share with you a program that has been a game changer for our family. At our learning center, we instructed and helped kids through pretty much every program on the market. So we know firsthand just how important a solid math foundation is for our kids' futures. Finding the right homeschool math curriculum that didn't compromise academic excellence, but also didn't put me and my kids through the ringer was a challenge. Until one day, I found CTC Math. You guys, the rest was history. First off, it's a mastery-based program, which means your child gets a full grasp of the material. It's also loaded with mixed reviews, ensuring your kids don't forget anything they've learned. The questions are adaptive too, which keeps students confident and progressing at their own pace. But the best part, all the teaching, grading, and testing, Done for you. With CTC Math, there is no compromise on excellence. Your child gets a top-notch education, and you just made your homeschool life easier. Visit CTC Math to get your free trial today. Whether you're newer to homeschooling or you've been homeschooling over a decade, the fact is creating a streamlined, successful homeschool is hard. The pressure is high, and the weight of responsibility often leads to self-doubt, second-guessing, and feeling completely overwhelmed with the excessive amounts of opinions and curricula options out there. We love our kids, and at the same time, the stakes are high. We don't want to mess this up. So how do we build a homeschool that our kids will thank us for when they're adults, and one that you have 100% confidence in? The first step to pulling all of that off is joining Thrive Homeschool Community. Thrive Homeschool Community is where you learn the 8-step homeschool success framework to build an undeniably successful homeschool. Each year and each kid presents us with uncharted territory. But when you have a good plan, the right plan, you can rest in the security and confidence that you are doing a great job. The path is easy. Join Thrive, say a quick hello to your new friends, start the 8-step homeschool success framework, and kiss anxiety goodbye. It's risk-free, no contracts. You can cancel anytime, no questions asked. Go to Christy-Faith.com. That's CHRISTY-FAITH.com. Enter promo code podcast for $10 off your first month. See you inside.
I say for me as a parent, I am unaccepting of because, and here's why. Because I'm a parent and I love my child and I want to give them the absolute best opportunity to thrive and live and enjoy life. And not to say that any of those diagnoses aren't real. They are. But should we have 20 million kids dealing with mental health conditions or being medicated in the United States alone? Doesn't that seem pretty extreme? I mean, as a kid, I can't imagine having any anxiety, depression. I was a little ADHD, sure. To have some behavior problems here and there. Yeah, if you trap me in a classroom for 7 hours, I was going to go nuts. I was not a good little kid in school. I was an absolute candidate for more of your outdoor school type, but that wasn't an option that I was aware of. So again, is it ADHD or is it trying to trap a kid in a seat for 7 or 8 hours?
Right. Absolutely. And so many parents pull their kids from school and decide to homeschool because their kid just doesn't fit in the box, doesn't learn that way. I talk about this in my book that there are 9 different pedagogies for learning. And if this is the first time you're hearing this, guys, grab my book because I go over the 9 different pedagogies of learning, and our public school system in America does one. It is one particular style of learning. That particular style of learning was not invented because a bunch of really smart people sat around a boardroom saying, I wonder what would be the best way for kids to learn. I can guarantee you, I go over that in chapter 3, the history of compulsory schooling. The decision was not made in the best interest of your child. Compulsory education in America was not created to do better for our children. And so it's exciting now that parents are looking to alternative methods. And here's why this is so interesting to me is, sure, your kid maybe was in school, has a rap sheet a mile long of all sorts of diagnoses and has an IEP. You pull your kid and you start to see dramatic changes. But at the same time, you might see that there are certain things that aren't improving, that life might be harder for my kid because of this, that, and the other. And I'm huge on uncovering every single rock before we start medicating our young children. And this is why I wanted you on this show, is to discuss that there is a lot of misdiagnosis for what is PANDAS. And I'd like you to speak to that. But also, I want parents to hear, what are the long-term effects of untreated or not managed PANDAS as well?
Well, I mean, that just takes you right into the physiological occurrence of what it is, right? So PANS PANDAS is an autoimmune reaction that is creating damage to tissue in your brain that leads to symptoms. The most notable is the basal ganglia. That's the one that is most talked about in the research at this point. So if you have an immune reaction that is attacking a tissue, other names for autoimmune conditions, right, is Hashimoto's thyroid. It destroys your thyroid over time. Your immune system does. Rheumatoid arthritis, it destroys your joints. MS, you lose the myelination, which is the fat around your nerves. So then you end up with loss of nerve function, right? So in the same situation, PANS PANDAS can damage brain tissue, leading to brain damage. Now, because this is only 12 years old, we don't have a bunch of studies that are going to say, oh yeah, well, untreated pandas leads to early onset of Alzheimer's, dementia, or anything else, because it's not been around long enough to do those studies. But I can just tell you it's an autoimmune condition attacking your brain. Anytime we have any autoimmune to the brain, it's going to lead to neurological deficit somewhere, if not figured out. And the hard part is I can't tell you this study to go look at that because it's just too young. But at this point, 12 years old is like a 1 month old in the world of medicine. Like, this is the absolute beginning of this diagnosis, because it takes Dr. Sweeto discovering it, then talking about it, some other doctors picking up on it, it growing from there, picking up steam, somebody with some money saying, I'd like to research it, doctors retiring from practice that know what it is and want to research it, them writing a book on it, the book getting into schools, like the medical schools then teaching on it. You tell me how long that just took, 30 years, 40 years? I don't know. I mean, it takes a long time when it's not a acute problem to make it into schools for us to learn about. So we're in the infancy of even understanding this problem.
Absolutely. And, it was interesting. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, a physical therapist, and I was just curious her thoughts. She's a physical therapist in the public school system. And I said, what do you think about primitive reflexes? And oh my goodness, I rattled the cage of a beast. She came after me. She's like, there's no research. There actually is some research. There's more than some research. But what's interesting is I think that the more conversations we have, people can discount this and say, this is fringe, where are the studies? But you know what? Everything needed to start somewhere. And in my opinion, if you are seeing results, dramatic results, and you are asking the right questions rather than treating symptoms, and what I mean by that is finding root causes of symptoms rather than just slapping medication on symptoms to make a child more tolerable for a teacher in the classroom, isn't that what we want for our kids? And so, as homeschooling parents, we tend to be a little bit rebellious anyway, but I think the more and more conversations we have about PANDAS, I think it's going to change the world, and parents will start asking even their medical practitioners, their pediatricians, better questions and put stones in shoes and have people raise eyebrows, and then the more that will happen. So I'm excited that you are at the forefront of all of this. What are some of the difficulties in diagnosing PANDAS? And I want you, does it have to be strep throat? And I have permission to share this. My nephew has PANDAS, and it presents with a lot of behavior stuff going on. And it was, as you had described, that's one of the reasons why the doctor, when they finally found a doctor who, interestingly, that doctor treats a lot of children with autism as well. So when you said that, I was like, oh, okay. But this doctor is 2 hours away from them. And it was a long process to get that diagnosis. Would you walk us through that process a little bit? And I know that we don't care so much about that label, but I also think labels are useful because they point us to something else as well. What are the difficulties in diagnosing it? And maybe what does it look like to go through that process?
Well, let's just talk about some numbers for you for a moment as we get into that. Autism right now, depending upon the study you read or so on, but it's pretty accepted that it's somewhere between 1 in 30 and 1 in 50 kids today in the United States, more boys than girls. PANDAS is 1 in 200. Still a whole lot of kids. And we're talking about a diagnosis that most doctors don't even know to look for, still 1 in 200 kids. So there's a whole lot of kids dealing with this problem that are not being diagnosed, is the bigger piece. So you'd ask, does it have to be strep? For PANDAS, it does, because it's caused by strep specifically. That's in the title. PANS is anything else. And autoimmune encephalitis is the symptom profile without the time frame. So that's part of the problem with these diagnoses. The PANS and PANDAS diagnoses, we're given a time frame criteria of how your body presents to be diagnosed. And shoot, as a parent of a kid or multiple kids and with a life and everything else, you're like, I notice my kid's not the same anymore. Has it been a week, a month, hopefully not a year at that point, but maybe it depends on the presentation and the severity of the symptoms, because, there are those kids where, there was a big change. They went from extroverted, running around, happy, fun-loving, happy-go-lucky kids to I'm not leaving the house, everything's scary, germaphobe, OCD. Like, that's a huge change. You're going to notice that really quickly. And then you're going to go and say it happened 1 week after strep, and you're going to get a diagnosis of PANS or PANDAS from a knowledgeable doctor pretty easily at that point, because it falls right within the exact criteria. Beyond that, you can look at lab testing. You can look at the Cunningham panel, which is the gold standard currently of lab testing. Not well known amongst doctors. Like I said, it's new. Most doctors don't know. I like to use a neural zoomer, which is a similar type test to the Cunningham panel. It is not considered the gold standard currently, but it has a whole lot more information. So what it's testing for is autoimmune antibodies, so immune regulated reactions to the brain. That's what it's testing for. So if somebody comes into me with a diagnosis of anything mental health for a child, I'm like, hey, like, it could be that thing that you were diagnosed with. Sure, absolutely. But it could also be something else over here that is a causation, that has causes versus just a diagnosis of a symptom. So I'm always wanting to get past that. So if you walk into my clinic and you're like, yeah, my kid's got anxiety, and that was the diagnosis, and they were given this medication to deal with it, and that's just where we're at, I'm going to go, oh, okay, well, very well, maybe anxiety definitely presents with that type of symptom if they are. But then I'm going to go, okay, can we look behind the symptom and get to the bottom of what's going on? So the difficulty with that is you got to find a doctor that, one, has the time, energy, and knowledge to get behind the symptom, that wants to go beyond prescription med and actually figure out what is causing it. With even getting to that point, your typical provider, whether they're a DO, DC, which is a chiropractor, an MD, naturopath, we're not really taught in schools to go looking for problems. We're taught to go looking for symptoms and to give the gold standard of Western medical treatment solution. So anxiety, it's a med. For fatigue or ADHD, it's a stimulant. For behavior issues, it's again back to something that's going to slow them down. Whereas, what if you have a kid where they started having this behavior, and it was after you moved into a new house, a few months after, and then the behavior started taking off? Well, it could be that they're just getting older and this behavior's happening. It could be the new school that you maybe put them into, or the fact that you moved them to stress them out. Sure, absolutely. What if it was mold in the house, or radon in the basement, or VOCs from the new home, or actinomyces, which is a bacteria that can grow on the flooring? So these are things that could be there that release toxins that get into the body. Those toxins get into the liver, which changes the ability to process hormones. It also increases inflammation on the brain, which then can lead to this autoimmune encephalitis that now is testable and is changing their whole behavior and outlook on life. And all that happened was you moved, right? So when you get into understanding all of the real triggers and possibilities, I mean, it could simply be moving to a new place and the water supply having an increase in arsenic or uranium in it, which, by the way, 170 million Americans right now are drinking uranium-filled water at a really low amount, but it still affects the body. So for me, knowing all these facts and just being a research nut, I've found so many things that possibly could affect a child's body that if we remove that trigger, they start to go back to living optimally, and they drop these diagnoses and need for meds because you found out why there was a problem versus because of a problem, we're going to give this chemical.
The show will resume in just a minute, but first I want to share with you an incredible resource that is totally free to homeschooling families everywhere. Have you ever felt like you were on trial for your homeschooling choice when visiting a doctor or another service provider? It's unsettling, especially when someone misinformed has the power to threaten your family. Unfortunately, we have heard countless stories of parents who have felt trapped in offices and met with suspicion rather than support simply because they were homeschoolers. I've been profiled and interrogated myself, and I'm sure many of you have as well. Enough is enough. It's time we proactively vet service providers before giving them our business and our money. Enter Christy-Faith's List, a directory 100% free to homeschooling families, connecting you with homeschool-friendly service providers who promise to support you in your homeschooling choice. We want every homeschooler in America to know about and be using this list. So here's how to make Christy-Faith's List a household name. 1, tell all your friends about it. Let's show the market just how powerful the homeschool movement is. 2, check Christy-Faith's List website before stepping foot into any service provider's office to make sure they are on there. And 3, if your favorite service provider isn't on the list, make sure to refer them. There's a button on the homepage of the website. It takes only 30 seconds, and that way we can send them a lovely invite. If you're listening and you are a homeschool-friendly professional, we want you on the list. We're eager to connect homeschooling families with you, shout your name from the rooftops, and bring you tons and tons of business. We have plans for every type of business, both small, local, nationwide, and worldwide. Check out ChristyFaithsList.com today. Hi, Mama. If you like my social media content and my show, I'm pretty sure you will love my book, Homeschool Rising, Shattering Myths, Finding Courage, and Opting Out of the School System. My book is for homeschool parents, both veteran and new, and the perfect book to hand any homeschool skeptics in your life so they can better understand why you've chosen this amazing lifestyle. This book will challenge you, empower you, encourage you, and give you solid, mindful answers to all those questions you get about your homeschooling choice. Grab your copy and maybe an extra one for your mother-in-law today. Homeschool Rising is available wherever books are sold.
I'd love to hear a success story from a kiddo who came to you that had PANDAS.
You know, there's so many touching stories because when you're working with the kids, it just touches your heart. Like you love seeing kids get back together, like back to their life. But there's one that really just truly touched my heart because she was so sweet. She was 9 when she came in, and I mean, dark circles under her eyes, kind of stuck to the couch, separation anxiety went up, irritable. And her mom wrote us a letter, like before we came in, because she didn't want to go through all of this in front of her daughter and really like pick at the way that she had changed, right? That's just not what parents want to do. So they oftentimes will send me like this written history and then be like, well, you can ask other questions, but I just didn't want to go through all that with you, which I totally get. I mean, you're trying to protect the mental health of your child. So I have this letter still, and I started working with her, and she was just in pain in her liver and gallbladder, and just, it was hard to get going. But she was a trooper. She's like, I can do this, Mom. I can do this. Like, let's go. So she started doing the herbal protocols and the detox. And they started changing their home. She started doing castor oil packs. She did a gallbladder flush, all of these things because she wanted to. And she was kind of researching it a little bit too. So she was smart and motivated, which was so cool to see from like a 9-10-year-old. Because by the time we were done, she was 10. And she even made YouTube videos out of all of the different at-home stuff she was doing so she could share it to other people. She's just so giving. And her mom sent me a write-up after we were all done. And it was pictures of her at the beginning, you know, wrapped up on the couch with dark circles. And you could just see the pale skin to like jumping through the air, running through sprinklers in the backyard, like showing like pictures of that and just saying all of her symptoms are gone. She feels so much better. Her anxiety is gone. The depression is gone. You know, just seeing that. And then, you know, the fact that she was making these videos and giving hope to other kids. And the reason why this sticks out the most is one final piece. Her mom actually was pretty sick too, because it was due to some of the things in the home that they lived in. And her mom, of course, like moms all do, daughter first. So then when mom came in and dad was working 2 jobs to pay for care and to make some of the changes in the home that were necessary. So I didn't get to meet him much, but mom started, and mom's body did not respond well to some of the changes we wanted to make. Like, it was a little harder on her. She had what's called a detox reaction. And she sometimes didn't feel like doing the castor oil pack or the sauna or something else that might help her. This little girl went up to her mom when she was laying on the couch, had all of the things that she needed to do. Said, "Come on, mom, we'll do it together. We're going to get well together." And was like the rock for her mom. And it almost brings tears to my eyes right now just talking about it, because just thinking of the maturity level of that young girl it was just such an incredible kid. And I just want all of the kids I work with to be able to get from where they are back to that kind of self.
What a fantastic story. And we all need that tribe and that team. And that is so sweet that she was that for her mother. And that's amazing that she got better too. We love to discuss game-changing ideas on this show. I mean, PANDAS is one in general. But if you were to tell parents in America one thing that you just wish everybody would know about your field of expertise, what would that be?
Oh man, it's so hard to pick one thing, but when it really comes down to it, it's making sure that you live in an environment that is conducive to optimal function. And I've mentioned a couple of those things as we talk today, but it's such a easy thing for me to tell someone, like, "Hey, live in a safe place." They're like, "Well, there's no bombs, there's no gunshots, I don't see smog rolling in my windows." Like, it's safe, right? But it's such a deeper level than that. And at first it can seem overwhelming, but it becomes nature to you when you make your home into your sanctuary, your place where you can thrive by doing a mold test once a year with an ERMI test, just to make sure that the air you're breathing is clean. Doing an appropriate radon test if you have a basement. Drinking water that is not radioactive, for instance. So I distill my water. Now, if your water doesn't have radioactive elements in it, then you can do our reverse osmosis. Eating food that is whole food and organic. So if you're eating from a box, no. I always tell parents, like, if you literally just do a healthy, moderate carb breakfast or lower carb breakfast, you will see significantly improved behavior up to lunch. And I've done this experiment with a bunch of different people that care for children. They ask all the parents, for their daycare, or the teacher asks the parents for the classroom, just, "Hey, do like a bacon and egg breakfast, and let's see what behavior happens." All of a sudden, the classroom in the morning is 100 times more calm, right? So eating real whole food that is organic, which removes all the toxins, and then hygiene products, making sure your hygiene products are clean and non-toxic, which you can go to ewg.org, environmentalworkersgroup.org, literally download an app. And then when you're at the store and you're replacing your toothpaste, just go, "Is this clean or not?" and scan the barcode. Doing that alone gives you such a leg up on being able to stay well. Because here's the thing. I've talked about PANS and autism and the scariness of how incredibly fast these diseases are climbing, because autism was 1 in 10,000 when I was a kid. I'm 38 now. Now it's 1 in 30. Yeah, we're better at diagnosing. We're not that much better at diagnosing.
Well,
Autoimmune diseases.
If you're enjoying the show and you don't want to miss out on future episodes, hit that like and subscribe button and show us some love with your comments. Those 5-star reviews really do make a difference.
Hey, spill the tea. I want to hear from you. Why do you think that is?
Disease is increasing at the same pace that environmental toxins are increasing. So whether you attribute this to pesticides, chemicals in our food, the chemicals in our water supply, the vaccine schedule, I'm not going to go into the depth of vaccine itself, but just the fact that when I was a kid, there was like 20 and I was vaccinated. But now I think it's like 89 if you include COVID. I mean, there's so many assaults to your body's ability to detox, and so many assaults to the immune system on a daily basis. If you add all of those together, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's not that any one of these things individually might be the full causation of the 400% rise in autoimmunity. It's the fact that there's so many of them, your body doesn't get a chance to be able to recover and heal.
Absolutely, 100%. And also, a lot of parents choose to homeschool. Actually, the number one reason why parents choose to homeschool in our country is safety. And that includes, we're not just talking about pew pew. It involves bullying. A lot of it is bullying and things like that. And I don't think there's enough conversation around what it does to your body when our children grow up living in fight or flight for 7 hours a day. Not sure what's going to happen at recess or who's going to tease them or this or that, the other. And we have now accepted a culture of bullying as just, well, how else are your kids going to toughen up? Well, if you read the research, raising resilient children, trauma is not part of that equation. Like, I'm talking actual trauma, which we don't call what happens in our schools trauma because we can't, because then that would be a huge issue for our country to deal with. And yeah, there's initiatives for bullying and this type of thing, but is your kid living in fight or flight for a majority of their life? And that affects you physically. It affects your brain and it affects your body's ability to function properly. That was not on our schedule for today, but it's something that I'm very passionate about is this where science meets academics and science meets learning and things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You want to do another entire hour-long podcast? Yes, I have so many thoughts on that. I mean, within my practice, we discuss nervous system ad nauseum. I mean, I put 3/4 of the people that come into my clinic into some sort of nervous system exercises, whether that be vagus nerve, limbic, somatic, because here's the thing that I tell people. If you're busy running from a bear, you're not thinking about what's for dinner. How do I detox out that arsenic from the water? Learning a new task. You just don't think about anything else besides running from a bear, because all that you need to do is get one more step to stay alive. So if you're a kid at school and you're worried about bullying, you're not going to think about how to learn multiplication tables because you're worried that you're going to get beat up at recess.
Yeah. And then a teacher, okay, now here's my soapbox. A teacher will say that child is inattentive. Well, no, not necessarily. That child, it may not be paying attention because they're worried about what's going to happen at recess later. That's not ADHD. That's something else, right? But the teacher just sees in a class of 30, like, oh, that kid's a daydreamer or whatever. I think this is such an important, and yeah, that's a whole nother episode, but you know what? These things are really important to talk about. Is there anything in your field, kind of an accepted ideology or practice that you just can't get behind?
I mean, anything that doesn't bring light to a root cause, I can't get behind. So, people call me a functional medicine doctor because I'm natural in mind. But it is commonplace for people to give out 30 recommendations of supplements or meds or even things to do at home. Like, and honestly, with the supplements or the home therapies, they're all good things. They're all good, whether it's vitamin C, D, zinc, GABA, melatonin. It's like all these things can be good. But I can't get behind polypharmacy. I definitely can't get behind polynutraceutical either. I think there has to be a plan and a process that is realistic and efficient for getting results. That way we can get to the bottom of things, because I don't want to be the next person that you come to help your kid. I want to be the last one with this problem. So for me, it's all about creating a highly efficient and effective plan. Because when you're working with kids, I can't give them 30 pills anyway for very long. They're going to start fighting back. They don't want to do that. Not to mention, that's really expensive poop, and parents have other things to spend their money on for their kids, like a savings account. So I can't get behind the shotgun approach.
I love it. I think that's such a beautiful answer. And I think that requires a mindset shift for a lot of people. Is what is the root cause here? What is actually going on? And what I hear you're not saying too is you're not discrediting these diagnoses. You're not doing that at all. What you're saying is, look, there could be a better path, a more holistic path, a more long-term healing path to these things. And let's get after it. Hey, do you practice? What do you have going on these days? If my audience wanted to find you, how would they be able to work with you?
Yeah, I do. I have a clinic here in Kansas City, Missouri. We work virtually all over the world with people to help them to find answers. There's 5 different providers within my clinic, and we all have different specialties. So acupuncture, chiropractic, health coaches, nurse practitioner. So we have a lot of perspectives and training to bring to the table to be able to help people to just see all the different possible sides of things, because it's a passion for me to educate, to bring light to these difficult or unknown conversations. It was Lyme for a long time. Lyme, nobody found that Lyme was real. And then all of a sudden, well, maybe in Connecticut. And now, the whole Northeast has Lyme. And if you're in California, you can't have Lyme. It's not here, but yes, it is. I'll test it and find it there. Well, PANS now is, okay, in Illinois, it's a state registered, insurance approved diagnosis, but Missouri is not. So, my goal is to educate parents and people to be able to have the opportunity to make informed decisions about their health. That's the biggest goal I have, is because knowledge is power. If I can give you the knowledge, you can decide what you want to do with it.
Absolutely. And mamas, trust your gut. If you feel like something deeper is going on and your kid, they don't have that sparkle anymore, the light has grown dim and you just don't know why, I just urge you to please uncover every rock. And even if it's an unconventional one or one that your pediatrician just, thinks you're silly for even suggesting, just stand strong in it and keep fighting for your baby, because you know your child more than anyone else on the planet. And sure, you might not be the doctor. You might not have all the expertise that Dr. Moore has, but you are the doctor. You are the expert on your child. So I think this is a transformative episode. Not only because this is something that my nephew has, but let me tell you the struggle. One of the reasons why I started Christy-Faith List, which is a network of homeschool friendly service providers, is because of the opposition my sister and so many other homeschool mamas have faced when they even make the suggestion of something that could be viewed as slightly crunchy to their pediatricians, to the point where I have had personal friends be scared after going to clinics or any type of thing, speech therapists, that they were going to have CPS called on them for no reason other than they were a homeschool family. And for that particular uninformed person, that was a red flag. But here is what I want to say. Keep fighting for your babies. Keep doing it and don't give up on them. And we're going to put all your information in the show notes so people can reach you and reach out to you. I assume that you will do sessions over Zoom?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That is so fantastic. Thank you for helping us bring this important issue to light. I will be following this in the next 20 years. I think we're going to look back at this particular episode when this was new and we're going to be like, can you believe that? Like, it's going to be just, it'll be very interesting to follow this over the next 20 years. Other things too, like I mentioned, primitive reflexes earlier, and it's an exciting movement to be looking at deeper root causes for things, and all those environmental factors as well. All the things that you said were things that my sister's doctor in Boulder had told her to do as well. So, and sure enough, little by little, they are seeing improvement, and we're starting to see him come back, which is amazing. And I will tell you, and I have permission to share this. He in a conventional office, he was slapped with an ODD diagnosis, and that. She knew that wasn't her baby. She knew that wasn't him. And so she kept searching. So mamas, you keep hunting And you will find those people. You will find your people if you keep looking. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.